My wife cheated on me with our neighbor and convinced me to sign a prenup agreeing to split $150, $0 of our savings, only to secretly transfer the estate worth over $2 million to him. Now she's suing me for half and I have no idea how it all went so wrong. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for about 5 years and on the surface, everything seemed fine. She was beautiful, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but in a way that I thought was just her personality. We had a nice house, decent jobs, and a good life. Or so I thought. It all started to unravel about 3 months ago. I noticed little things. She was more irritable, secretive about her phone, deleting texts when I walked into the room. She'd come home late from work more, often claiming she was working late or meeting with clients. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, she's a lawyer, so I figured her job was demanding. But then I caught her in a lie that made my stomach drop. One night I was scrolling through her phone out of boredom. I know, stupid, but I was trying to see if she was hiding something. And there it was, a series of texts from the neighbor, Mark. They weren't just friendly. They were flirty, at times downright suggestive. Nothing explicit, but enough to tell me they crossed a line. They talked about meeting up, sharing drinks, and even about spicing things up. My heart sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started watching her more closely. The thing is, Lisa is a master of hiding her tracks. She's clever, always has a story ready. When I brought it up, she called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, and accused me of being jealous. She even told me I was overthinking, that she loved me and would never do anything to hurt me. But I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. It was like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Then came the night I decided to dig deeper. I snuck into her emails, her social media accounts. That's when I found the real bombshell. There was a transfer of money, not just some petty cash or gifts, but a transfer of over $150, $0 from our joint savings account to an account registered under her name but linked to Mark. The transfer was recent, just a few days before I found out. I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing. How could she do this? After everything we'd built, she was secretly siphoning off our money to him. I felt sick. Betrayal doesn't even cover it. It's like she'd planned this all along. She convinced me to sign a prenup last year, saying it was for our future, and I stupidly believed her. She kept saying she wanted to protect what was ours, but she was just protecting her own ass. She knew what she was doing. She had been cheating on me with Mark, and now she was trying to steal from us both. The worst part, she'd somehow convinced me to agree to split $150, $0 of our savings, which I thought was fair, considering how much we had. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. I confronted her the next day. I told her I knew everything. Her reaction was classic Lisa, defensive, bitchy, and full of lies. She said I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a friend. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid and jealous. She accused me of being insecure, of not trusting her, but I had proof. The bank statements, the transfer records, the texts. I showed her everything and her face turned red with rage. She called me a psycho, said I was ruining everything. But I wasn't about to let this slide. That's when I realized I was in deep trouble. I'd trusted her with my life, with everything I had, and now I felt like a fool. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. All I could think about was how she had lied to me, manipulated me, and now she was trying to take everything we had built. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal that I couldn't even put into words. I started questioning everything, our marriage, her love, my own judgment. How did I miss all these signs? How did she manage to pull this off without me noticing? I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not only was she cheating, but she was also trying to steal from us. I needed a plan, but I didn't even know where to start. Everything was falling apart so quickly. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And the worst part, I still loved her. Or at least I thought I did. That's what made it so damn hard to figure out what to do next. After I uncovered everything, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept spinning. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the pattern sooner. I thought she was just stressed with work, or maybe a little distant because of some minor argument. But now, looking back, there were so many little clues I ignored or brushed off. Her secretive phone habits, her late nights out, the way she'd get defensive when I asked questions. I was blind, and now I was paying the price. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the bank statements and her phone, trying to process what I'd just found. The transfer of over $150, $0 to Mark's account was a slap in the face. That's a lot of money, money we had saved for years, gone just like that. And the fact that she had convinced me to sign a prenup that protected her interests while secretly transferring our estate worth over $2 million to Mark. That was the real punch to the gut. I felt betrayed, furious, and utterly helpless. I knew I couldn't confront her again without a plan. I needed to get legal advice, find out exactly what I was dealing with. So I called a lawyer I knew, a guy named Steve, a friend of a friend who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I laid everything out for him: the affair, the secret transfer, the prenup, the estate. He was quiet at first, then he said, "This is a mess. She's trying to clean you out, and it looks like she's been planning this for a while." That's when I realized the scope of her betrayal. She wasn't just cheating, she was actively plotting to take everything from me. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. My mind raced through all the memories, all the times I'd trusted her, all the plans we'd made. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? I kept thinking about her bitchy attitude, how she'd always be quick to dismiss my concerns, how she'd twist things to make herself look innocent. I decided I had to do something immediately. I couldn't let her transfer more money or try to hide assets. I told Steve I wanted to freeze all accounts, get a temporary restraining order if needed, and start the process of questioning her about the estate transfer. I also needed to figure out how she convinced me to sign that prenup. That document was supposed to protect us, but she used it as a weapon. I felt so stupid for trusting her, for believing she had my best interests at heart. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting even more bitchy and dismissive. When I confronted her with the evidence, she threw a fit. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, and claimed I was accusing her of something she didn't do. She said she loved me, that I was just jealous of Mark, and that I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. I saw right through her lies. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt myself. But I wasn't about to fall for it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My head was pounding, and all I could think about was how I'd been played. I kept replaying her words, her expressions, how she'd lied to my face. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? All those years we'd been together, and it turned out she was just using me as a stepping stone to Mark and his money. The thought made me sick. I started questioning everything: my judgment, our marriage, her love. Was any of it real, or was I just blind, clinging to a fantasy? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. I had to protect myself, my assets, and my future. I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to act fast before she managed to drain us completely, or worse, hide things from me. So I made a decision. I was going to fight back. I didn't know exactly what that would look like yet, but I was determined not to let her get away with this. I knew she'd try to spin it, to manipulate the situation, but I had proof now. I had to be smart, keep my emotions in check, and let the legal process do its job. Still, deep down, I felt devastated. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. And now I was faced with the harsh reality that the woman I trusted the most had turned out to be someone else entirely, someone capable of betrayal on a scale I never imagined. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all these signs? How did she manage to pull this off for so long without me catching on? But there was no answer, only the cold, hard truth. She was a liar, a manipulator, and now she was trying to take everything I'd worked for. I was angry, yes, but also scared, because I knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was coming, and I had no idea how deep her deception went or what else she might be hiding. The next few days were a blur. I spent every free moment poring over bank statements, emails, texts, anything that could give me a clearer picture of how deep her betrayal ran. I contacted the lawyer again. Steve was cautious but confident we could build a case. Meanwhile, Lisa kept acting like nothing was wrong, bitchy, dismissive, and pretending she was the victim. She'd throw fits if I questioned her, insisting I was paranoid and jealous, which only made me angrier. One night, I decided I needed to see her in her own words. I set up a hidden recorder in the living room, just to catch her when she thought no one was listening. I wanted to know what her real attitude was behind closed doors, how she justified her actions, what her true intentions were. I knew it was sneaky, but I felt like I had no choice. If she was planning to steal everything, I needed proof of her lies, her manipulation, her bitchy attitude. When she thought no one was watching, the recording caught her in a rare moment of honesty or maybe just anger. She was ranting about me, how I was clingy, possessive, and insecure. She called me a sore loser and blamed me for ruining her life because I couldn't handle her success. She said Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting, and that I should just accept that she was entitled to have a life outside our marriage. Her words stung more than I could say. It was like hearing her admit she was planning to leave me, to take everything, and she didn't even care. She was so bitchy, so dismissive of what I was feeling, like I was nothing to her. That's when I realized I had to do more than just watch and listen. I needed to act. I reached out to a forensic accountant I knew, someone who could trace all her hidden transfers and find out if she'd transferred more of our estate. I also started preparing for a divorce, getting documents in order, gathering evidence, and planning my next move carefully. I knew she'd try to fight me tooth and nail, especially now that she saw I was onto her. But the thing that really pushed me over the edge was when I discovered she'd convinced me to sign a prenup last year. She had her lawyer draw it up, and she made me sign it without really reading the fine print. She told me it was just a precaution, that we'd never need it, yet she used it as leverage to get me to agree to split our savings. She said it was fair and that we were protecting each other's interests, but I now see she was just manipulating me into giving her what she wanted. She'd also convinced me to put the estate in her name, claiming it was for security, but in reality, she was planning to transfer everything to Mark. I found out she'd been talking to her lawyer about setting up a trust, making sure Mark would inherit everything. All the while, she was acting like she loved me, like she cared about our future. It was all a lie, just a way to secure her position, to pretend everything was fine, while secretly plotting to screw me over. I felt so betrayed, so foolish. How did I not see it? How did I miss all the signs? I'd always been the trusting type, believing in honesty and loyalty. But now I saw her for what she really was, a bitchy, manipulative woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying me in the process. By the end of the week, I had a plan in motion. I was going to file for divorce, challenge the prenup, and freeze all her accounts. I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. I knew she'd come at me with lies and tears, but I was done playing nice. I'd been played once and I wasn't going to let her do it again. This was war and I was ready for it. The emotional toll was enormous. I felt humiliated, angry, and deeply hurt. I kept asking myself how I'd let this happen, how I'd been so blind. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her see me break. I had to protect what was left of me and rebuild from this mess. I was furious that she'd lied, cheated, and manipulated her way into what she wanted, but I also knew that I couldn't stay with her anymore, not after everything I'd uncovered. I sat alone in the dark one night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had become so twisted. I still loved her, or I thought I did, but that love was gone now. It was replaced with a bitter resolve to take back what was mine. I realized I had to face the truth. Lisa was not the woman I thought she was. She was a liar, a thief, and a bitch. And I was going to make sure she paid for it, one way or another. The day I finally decided to move forward was like stepping into a storm I couldn't control. I met with Steve, my lawyer, early in the morning. We went over everything: proof of the transfers, her texts, the bank statements, the hidden accounts. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, and dread because I knew once I filed, this whole nightmare would become public, and Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. Steve laid out the steps: filing for divorce, challenging the prenup, freezing her assets, and investigating the estate transfer. He warned me she'd probably try to spin it all, accuse me of abuse or infidelity, maybe even threaten to sue me for defamation. I told him I didn't care. I was done playing nice. I was sick of her lies, her bitchy attitude, her manipulation. I wanted her gone, and I wanted my money back. As I left his office, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was it, the beginning of the end. I knew she'd retaliate, probably try to smear my name, but I had enough evidence to fight back. I was ready for a legal battle. More than that, I was ready to reclaim my life, even if it meant going through hell to do it. The next few days were chaos. Lisa caught wind of what I was doing and went into full bitch mode. She called me names, accused me of trying to ruin her, and said I was a jealous, insecure man who couldn't handle her success. She threw tantrums, slammed doors, and even tried to guilt-trip me with tears, claiming she loved me and that I was destroying our marriage. But I saw through her tears. Those tears were just a mask for her real intentions. She was scared, and she knew she was losing control. She also started making moves to hide her assets. I found out she transferred some of the estate into offshore accounts, and she'd been talking to her lawyer about setting up a trust that would protect her from any legal claims. I knew I had to act fast. I got a court order to freeze her accounts and a temporary restraining order to prevent her from transferring any more assets. It was a small victory, but I knew this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, I was still haunted by the thought of her lying in bed at night, pretending to be innocent while secretly planning her escape with Mark's money. I kept replaying her words, her bitchy smirk, her dismissive attitude. That night, I sat in the living room, feeling exhausted but determined. I realized I had underestimated her, way underestimated her. She was a master manipulator, and I'd been a fool for trusting her. I also started digging into her past. I wanted to know if this kind of betrayal was just a one-time thing or part of a pattern. I hired a private investigator just to get some background on her dealings with Mark and to see if she had any other affairs or shady financial schemes I didn't know about. What I found out chilled me even more. She'd been involved in a few other questionable financial moves, and there were whispers she'd been unfaithful to her previous husbands, too. It was like I'd married a con artist who wore a pretty face. The most frustrating part was her constant lying. Every time I confronted her, she'd deny everything, spin stories, or blame me for being insecure. She'd say I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, that I was imagining things. But I had the proof now, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. The betrayal cut deep, but I was determined to see this through. One night, she finally lost her temper. She yelled at me, called me a jealous bastard, and said I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. She told me I was just insecure and that she deserved her own life outside our marriage. That was the moment I realized she was never going to change. She'd been lying from the start, and I needed to accept that. She was a bitchy, manipulative woman who'd do anything to protect her own interests, no matter who she hurt. So I made a decision. I was going to divorce her, fight for my assets, and make sure she paid for her lies. I knew she'd try to spin things, accuse me of all sorts of things, but I had enough evidence to stand my ground. I also started preparing emotionally. I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about trust, betrayal, and reclaiming my dignity. I had to get through the legal battles, the emotional fallout, and the pain of losing someone I once loved. Looking back now, I realize I was naive to think marriage was about honesty and loyalty. Lisa showed me that sometimes the person you trust the most can turn out to be your biggest enemy. I learned a hard lesson about trust, about not ignoring the signs, and about standing up for myself when it matters most. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't be again. I've got a fight on my hands, and I'm ready to win. The legal process moved faster than I expected, mostly because Lisa's attempts to hide her assets only made her look more guilty. Once the court granted the freeze on her accounts, she started to panic. That bitchy attitude I'd seen so many times turned into outright rage. She screamed at me, called me every name in the book, and accused me of trying to control her life. But I didn't care. I was done playing her game. I knew I had the evidence, and I was determined to see this through. She tried to get a restraining order herself, claiming I was harassing her. The irony was not lost on me. I had been patient, quiet even, waiting for her to come clean. But she kept lying, spinning stories about how I was crazy, possessive, and jealous. She painted herself as the victim, but I saw right through her. The court saw through her too. They heard her request, and I got a court order to prevent her from transferring any more assets or making any moves that could hurt us. Meanwhile, I started to dig deeper into her financial history. I hired a forensic accountant, and what we uncovered was shocking. She transferred more than I knew into offshore accounts, and there were even some shell companies registered in her name. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. I also found out she'd been talking to her lawyer about setting up a trust that would essentially shield Mark from any legal claims I might make. It was clear she'd gone all out to protect her assets, even before I found out about her affair. I also decided to confront her directly again just to see how she'd react. I sat her down, calmly but firmly, and told her I knew everything about Mark, the transfers, the estate. I told her she'd been caught and there was no way out of it now. Her bitchy, dismissive attitude vanished for a moment, replaced by a flicker of panic. Then she snapped. She started crying, claiming I was ruining her life, that she loved me and this was all a misunderstanding. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Her tears were fake, and I knew she was just trying to manipulate me again. She begged me not to take everything away from her, to let her keep some of her rights, but I wasn't about to be played anymore. I told her she had already lost, that her lies had caught up with her, and that I was going to fight for everything she tried to steal. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because she'd betrayed me so completely, and relief because I finally had a chance to take control. The worst part was, despite all the evidence, she kept insisting she was innocent. She kept lying, saying Mark was just a friend, that she never transferred any money, that I was paranoid. She called me insecure and jealous, just like she always did. But I knew better now. I knew she was a liar, a manipulator, and a thief, and I was done trusting her. In the days that followed, I kept pushing forward with the legal process. I filed for divorce, challenging the prenup, and demanding an accounting of all her assets and transfers. I also started documenting everything: her bitchy attitude, her lies, her attempts to hide her money. I knew she'd try to drag this out, maybe even go to court and claim I was the problem, but I was prepared. I had enough evidence to fight her every step of the way. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. I'd loved her, trusted her, and built a life with her. And in the end, it was all a lie. She'd been cheating on me with Mark, secretly transferring our estate and trying to take everything we had. The thought made me sick. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I missed all the signs. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I had to focus on rebuilding my life, even if it meant starting over alone. I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. People can hide their true selves behind a pretty face or a convincing smile. Lisa showed me that people can be very good at deception, especially when it benefits them financially. Now, I'm just waiting for the final court date. I want her to know I'm serious, that I won't let her get away with this. I want her to face the consequences of her actions. And honestly, I feel more determined than ever. This betrayal is going to cost her everything. She's trying to protect. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm done being the victim. I'm ready to move on, stronger and wiser from this nightmare. The final court hearing was a whirlwind. I sat there feeling like I had been dragged through hell, but also with a strange sense of closure. The judge listened carefully to both sides, reviewed the evidence I'd presented, and ultimately ruled in my favor. The court ordered Lisa to return all transferred assets, including the estate worth over $2 million, and to pay back the $150, $0 she secretly took from our savings. The prenup challenge was also granted, nullifying her attempts to shield herself with that document. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Lisa's bitchy attitude was replaced with pure rage. She yelled, screamed, and tried to argue her way out of it, but the court had already seen through her lies. She stormed out of the courtroom, still crying crocodile tears, but I didn't care. I knew I had done everything I could to protect myself and my assets. The feeling of victory was bittersweet, because it came after so much pain, betrayal, and heartbreak. Still, I was relieved that I fought hard and won. In the aftermath, I started to rebuild. I sold the house, moved into a smaller apartment, and began to focus on myself. Therapy helped me process the emotional trauma. I had to work through feelings of betrayal, anger, and loss. I also took a long, hard look at my own trust issues, realizing I'd been naive to think love alone could protect me from someone so manipulative. I learned to be more cautious, more guarded, and most importantly, to listen to those red flags I'd ignored for too long. As for Lisa, her future is uncertain. She's facing not only the legal consequences but also the social fallout of her actions. I hear she's trying to fight the court ruling, claiming I'm the villain, but I know the truth. She's the one who betrayed her vows, lied about her intentions, and tried to steal what we built together. I hope she learns from this, but honestly, I'm done caring about her. I've moved on. Looking back, I realize that the most important lesson I learned is about self-respect. I trusted her once and she shattered that trust, but I also learned that I am stronger than I thought. I can stand up for myself, fight for what's mine, and rebuild after betrayal. It's not easy and it's not pretty, but it's necessary. Now I'm focusing on my future. I've started dating again, cautiously. I'm investing in myself, my health, my career, my happiness. The pain of betrayal will always be part of me, but it's also made me more aware, more resilient. I know I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. To anyone reading this who's been betrayed, trust me, it hurts like hell. But you're stronger than you think. Stand up, gather your evidence, fight for what's right. Don't let anyone steal your peace or your future. Because at the end of the day, the only person who truly has your back is yourself. And if you keep that in mind, no betrayal can truly break you.